Good morning, everybody. I hope you all are well. As you can see, the topic: what compensation calculations can teach us. And I'm sure we're all familiar with this this kind of thing. The roles of a harsh professional. If you look at some of even an advert, for example, let me get this other thing up. An advert for a job or something like that will tell you that training is a critical part of a harsh professional's duties. Disseminating information, participating in meetings, raising awareness, informing, advising. All of these, all of this kind of evidence from research, from job advertisements, and so forth, clearly indicates the importance of training. An interesting case here is the American one shows that professionals, safety engineers as they call it, spend only 4% of their time training, and yet, you know, even their own analysis shows that training is critically important, utmost importance in the performance of one's duties as a safety professional. So training is critical, one of the top functions we have to perform as a safety professional. Then we have these kind of challenges that I'm sure most of us have faced. Challenge of in doing our work is getting our message across, communicating to our clients, which are our primary clients, in the workers that we work with. We spend a lot of time talking, communicating various things, but it doesn't seem to be getting across. There seems to be some kind of disconnect. Maybe one of the things we can use to try and understand it is from the work done in the field of risk psychology, where we learn about the difference between risk aversion and loss aversion. In our work, we do a lot of risk assessments. We talk a lot about probabilities. And yet it seems that the human brain just doesn't work with probabilities. It just doesn't naturally understand probabilities. We don't have a probabilistic brain. And when we talk a lot about the chances of an incident happening, or the chances of this, or the probability of that, we could be misspeak. We could be talking past our clients. Because it seems that whilst we are talking a lot about risk and about probabilities, people, humans, all of us seem to focus more on what can be lost. And loss aversion, the fear of losing something, the definite fear, or the fear of definitely losing something, seems to motivate us in our decision making much more than you know what I mean, a probability, a discussion around probabilities. So this thing about loss aversion seems to be something that could help us, and it's the theme of my presentation here today. If you look, for example, at what insurance companies do, they talk directly to what can be lost. You get divorced, you lose your marriage, your partner, you lose a family member from death, or a fire, you can lose your property, and so forth and so forth. And even when they try to squeeze the maximum out of you, for example, in a hired car agreement, they highlight loss at all points. What can be lost in an incident? I don't think you'll ever find a probability of a loss in any of this documentation from insurance, unless you press them. Probably they'll talk about the chances of it. They'll just be going over it very superficially. So compensation calculations. We have two. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. Industrial compensation laws, COIDA and a DIMWA. You know, a DIMWA is limited to people in the mining sector. Specific health conditions in the mining sector, and then COIDA applies to everybody, including people in the mines. For our purposes of this presentation, we're going to focus on disablement in terms of COIDA. And there's either partial disablement or total disablement. Partial disablement means the inability to perform all your work in terms of your job description. Whereas total disablement means inability to perform any work. And also there's a distinction between temporarily being disablement and permanent. And those have the obvious meanings. Right, the process, just quickly, I'm sure again most of us know this. Injured person gets injured, and I'm limiting my input today to disablement due to, as the Act says, injury or serious mutilation. Dramatic language. Injured persons get taken to a hospital, they get assessed by the doctor, and the medical reports are sent to the Compensation Commissioner. And those medical reports, as you know, detail the nature of the injury, and we'll talk to this partial or total, temporary, or permanent. At the Compensation Commission, the degree of disablement, which I'm calling D, is determined using Schedule 2, and the compensation award is calculated using Schedule 4. So 4 types, I'm only focusing on these 4 for today. 4 types of awards. You get the total disablement or more award. That's a monthly pension calculated at 0.75 or 75% of monthly income. Straight away, you can see there's a 25% loss of income there. Right? I'm just going to deal with these and this type of benefit. I'm not going to talk about the additionals or the extensions, just to keep the discussion simple for the benefit of the point I'm trying to make. So that's total disablement, 100% disability. Remember what that means, total inability to do any form of work. You get 75% of your monthly income, your salary, as a pension for the rest of your life. Partial disablement is in 3 categories. Maybe we talk about the 30% one, because that's a simple calculation. 30% disablement means that you get paid a lump sum of 15 times your monthly salary. So that's about 1.5, if my calculations are correct. No, 1.25 years salary there. 1.25 years salary there. Right? For the 30%, for example, a loss of an eye. Less than 30% disability is calculated as a ratio of that 30% disability, as you can see. It's 15 times your monthly salary multiplied by the percent of disability divided by 30. So, for example, a loss of a thumb, which is a 25% disability, 25 would be divided by 30, and that fraction would be then multiplied by the 15 times your monthly salary. And there you can see there, it works out in case of a loss of a thumb to about 12.5 months of salary. Between 30 and then 99% disability, for example, a loss of an arm at the shoulder, you have a monthly pension calculated again using 75% of your monthly salary multiplied by the percent disability divided by 100. So for the loss of the arm at the shoulder, then that calculation comes up to about, let's say, half a monthly salary for the rest of your life. So those are just the 4 types of disabilities due to injury, serious mutilation that I'm discussing today, and the implications of this. So what are the lessons that we can learn from this? The lessons that we can see is that, first of all, monthly compensations are calculated according to your monthly salary. The lower you earn, the less you get compensated. For example, if you talk about a designer, they get a higher monthly salary. versus a laborer. So they get a higher compensation. And goes back to some of the analysis of workmen's compensation, where it is called the grand bargain. It's interesting to note that workmen's compensation payments represent a cheaper alternative for the economy, and hence this description in the literature of the grand bargain. Second thing to note, compensation payments are not a lotto win. Talk to a lot of people, you get the sense that people think if they get injured at work or so forth, they stand to receive a substantial payout. But as you can see, compensation payments are made according to your monthly salary, and those amounts coming out of there definitely do not add up into millions, and definitely cannot buy back lost capacity. Further thing that workers, we need to communicate to them is that disability comes with new costs. For example, and we're just talking financial costs here, not even social or emotional costs. In terms of a total disability, as you can see there, that changes your entire living environment. Access issues, ramps and doorways and bathrooms, a bed that needs to be different, full-time care needs to be paid for. And even moving from your home, a simple thing like commuting into an office or to a hospital to get an assessment, that's going to take special, privately arranged transport. So these are all new costs that have to be factored in to see how do you use whatever compensation payment you get. Partial disability can mean the loss of your employment due to medical incapacity. Loss of an arm from the shoulder. What would that mean to the job prospects for a laborer, for a person on a construction and engineering sites, especially labor? So loss of the thumb on your dominant hand. What would that mean for a person's ability to continue to work, to hold tools, to use equipment? Without the thumb, it's very difficult to have a strong grip. There will also be there's a possibility of a change in your career because your physical capacity is different. The company can determine that you have to move to a different career. It can be a different salary, it can be different career opportunities, prospects for promotion, status in amongst your peers in your workplace. All of that can radically change due to a partial disability. So we can see running through this thread that there is a loss experienced by a person who suffers some form of disability due to a workplace injury. The loss is real. It's not a probability. It's not a possibility. There are definite loss that is experienced in terms of incomes, careers, and so forth, increased costs. And interesting to note that there's a lot of focus in amongst economists when they're analyzing these monthly pensions. There's a huge issue they analyze around whether the comparison between workmen's compensation pensions and minimum wages. We can be arguing here that clearly monthly pensions for permanently disabled people or totally disabled people is too low. But economists will talk about the comparison between a monthly compensation pension and the minimum wage. And if you increase monthly pensions, there's this issue of moral hazard, as it's called, where it could be an incentive for people to purposefully injure themselves in order to score a bigger monthly pension. I don't know what you guys feel about that, but I find it quite ridiculous. And it comes back to, again, our reasons for doing occupational health and safety. No one wants to lose. No one likes losing. Every injury that we experience, whether it's a muscle strain of the lower back or dust in the eye or whatever it might be, up until a permanent total disability, costs the victim. You hurt your back, you have some pain when you get home, you're going to go past Dis-Chem, grab some rubbing ointment or grab a few painkillers. You can't take those receipts back to work the next day and say, well, I'm going to hurt myself lifting that material. So here's the receipt for either the doctor's appointment or the medication or the cream or whatever I've got from Dis-Chem. It's important for us to note that our bodies, our physical bodies, are a principal source of income as workers. It's our most valuable property. And we take this most valuable property and we lease it out to the employers. That's the nature of the employment contract. We lease this property of ours to the employer to use in their production operation. And our property gets used and abused, clearly. There's a lot of abuse of our property. And there seems to be a tendency to value this property of a worker as less than even yellow plant, for example, on a site. Can you imagine abusing a piece of yellow plant? What the hiring company will do to you about that? And yet, workers' bodies are routinely abused, and they suffer, all sorts of injuries, and that cost is borne out in the final analysis by the worker themselves. Remember having an argument with a contractor about the need to slow work down on a hot day, and I had to use the analogy of how this contractor looks after his bucky. That if the bucky's heat gauge increases, even before getting to a danger level, the contractor would take some action, would stop, would check the water, would investigate to see what's causing this increase in temperature of the engine. And yet, how often do we monitor heat exposures on construction sites where workers' bodies are being pushed to the limits, and they're just managing to finish the day off without showing any kind of drastic symptoms. So I know there's people that will have difficulty talking about the human body as a piece of property, but it's enlightening, I feel, to look at it as a piece of property, a valuable piece of property that deserves the same degree of protection that the law provides for, renting and leasing of other forms of property like vehicles and buildings. And this is a key point for me that I stress in my work. So we get back to our communication. Some interesting old posters from the Soviet Union, occupational health and safety. I find them very interesting. We need to communicate to workers that exposing their bodies to hazards has an impact on their bodies. The impact might not present immediately in case of occupational disease, but the impact is there. There's no such thing as a free lunch. We need to drive home the point that occupational health and safety is primarily aimed at protecting workers' bodies from damages. And all these hundreds of rules and laws and codes of practice are supposedly aimed at providing the protections that are necessary to ensure that workers' bodies are A, not damaged, or B, adequate provision is made for treatment and recovery after some incident or some exposure has taken place. So, seemed like I've been a bit quick there. That's my presentation, that we need to focus and highlight to workers that they will experience a cost related to exposures in the workplace. Those costs might be difficult to determine. In some cases, for example, occupational disease can take a long time for occupational lung disease to present itself. Bearing in mind, of course, that the number one killer occupational cause of death is occupational cancer, and we know that can take a long time to present itself. But workers must understand that the measures that we try to develop with them and implement with them in the workplace is aimed at protecting their most valuable property, a piece of property without which they cannot provide for themselves and their families. Okay, I don't want to over-repeat there. Thanks for listening. If there's any comments or questions?
Thanks, Warren. Thank you very much for the presentation. Well accepted, well taken. Thank you very much. Yeah, we will open it up for questions and answers. Let me see if I can assist. I saw one from Innocent on the chat. What if a person lost a tip of his index finger? How do we classify that injury?
Yeah, that is a disablement, and it will appear on the schedule in the COIDA. That is clearly a disability. That's clearly a low percentage. I think that comes down to it. I don't have the charts in front of me right now, but it's less than a 5%.
Yeah, 5%, I think. Yeah, from the last table that they have in the schedule.
Yeah. It's interesting to note that the amounts paid, if we go back to the calculation again, are calculated off monthly salary. That's I found when I present this. This for example, this for everybody's information is my go-to toolbox talk. I find it amazing that workers, when I discuss this with workers, they generally don't have an understanding of how compensation is calculated, and maybe it's pointed for us to, and that's why I emphasize this kind of, that we need to highlight it. A lot of people think that it's similar to the road accident fund, where friends and relatives have received substantial
couple of millions, a
couple of millions, and then people don't do the full calculation. So and so's cousin received 1.5 million rand because of a serious head injury in a car accident. People think it's a lotto win. And you're going to say, but hold on, that person needs full-time care. A person with a serious head injury or neck injury, paraplegic, needs full-time care. And that comes out of that payment. That payment pays for everything. You can't go back and say, my nurse, or I need a nurse to look after me. And people who have had to look after bedridden family members know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a 24/7, unforgiving, relentless, duty that one has to fulfill. Come, rain or shine, holidays or not, the person needs your help. It's your family member. You can't neglect them. You have any decency, and you pay for that. And the bed has to change. You can't have a bedridden person on an ordinary bed. They will develop all sorts of issues and complications. So that's where this payment comes from. It's not free money. You lose your let's take a common issue, which is hearing loss. I mean, the most common sort of disability in the workplace, hearing loss. If you sing in the choir, how will you continue to sing in the choir or in a band or anything like that, or even for yourself in the shower when you're deaf? Your life changes.
You'll never be the same again.
You'll never be the same again. And workers must understand that our primary duty is occupational health safety, is to protect them from any damage to their bodies. And we need to convey that to them. I mean, that we trying to protect their most valuable assets. I mean, can you imagine trying to use a hammer without a thumb? as a 25%, that's a 1-year lump sum payment.
That's all you
And
get
then
for the rest of your life. Yeah.
that's it, you know. And then what do? You lose an arm or a hand. How do you push a wheelbarrow around site? You know, I don't know. Fabian, have you ever worked with anybody who had one arm or one hand?
Yeah, actually, one of our members, Kelman Hennebury, he lost his hand in a freak accident a couple of years ago. He was working on tools at the time. I actually shared his article was also on one of the recent Africa directives, and then also he had a video that I asked him to do to send it out to everybody. So yeah, I mean he clearly defines in there the impact, not only financial impact but emotional impact, everything that it put on him, the strain it put on him and his family. I mean, he was a working man. He had to basically move back into his parents' home with his family to live in his old bedroom that he moved out for so many years because he couldn't obviously fend for his family. So yeah, it was quite a substantial. I mean, I think it's actually a brilliant video that a lot of safety people should show to their guys during their inductions when they're starting, so that they can see the impact. And I mean, just table that you've clearly explained the impact and the cost of how they work it out as to what they would get. I mean, the guys can even do a quick dummy test to say, okay, you lose your arm, this is what you get for 1 year. You think this is going to support your family for the rest of your life, you know? So I think that's definitely an excellent example and a tool that needs to be utilized by safety professionals in the industry. So thanks a lot. I see I got a few hands up here. Eric, I see your hand, and Juan. I just want to go quickly into the question that Vanessa posted, and then we'll go on to the hands that are up. Vanessa asked, what happens when you have been injured on duty and you have been for surgery, but this injury is a reoccurring one after you have left the company? Does it now become your financial burden, or is there a way for the company to still pay for your bills? This was a knee injury.
Again, guys, I'm not what do you work? There's a specialization in law which deals with these kind of claims, so they can get pretty complicated. And if you look at the Act, also it does describe where there can be increased compensations if you can produce, for example, show negligence on the part of the company. You can get increased compensation for that. Okay. First of all, the medical, there's a period of time where the fund pays for medical treatment and pensions. You can get that extended. There are terms in the Act where for example, younger workers can get increased compensation payments and all of that. But it is a big issue that one will have to get proper advice from an attorney that specializes in this kind of claims. But I think all been said about how the fund works and the bureaucracy and the difficulties they have with improving the service. It comes down to, even if they perform additional operations on your knee, compensation for pain and suffering, someone can correct me there if there's any of that available, but I doubt it.
Not from what I recall. There's no compensation for pain and suffering. Even from legal explanation that Gerard mentioned on one of our courses that we attended with him, he said that they don't pay for any pain and suffering. Another point that I just want to raise pertaining to the answer on Vanessa's question is that the company itself will not pay for the treatment for your injury. That is paid through the compensation commissioner. Okay, so you cannot go back to the company again and ask for them to. You can go back to a doctor and ask them to refer the case again to the compensation commissioner for them to consider it as, let's say, permanent disability, etc. Or you might need a another operation, which they can also pay for on your behalf. So that's basically what the company itself would cover you for. So I can see Alex has a question and Joseph, but I want to go up to the hands up quickly, and then we can go back down to Alex Peterson and Joseph. Eric, your hand was up first.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
I just wanted to add to what Warren is saying. You know, I've worked in the industry for a while, and you sometimes when you get to sit with the guys, maybe during lunch or during working hours, you hear some guys that actually want to injure themselves so that they can get some money, thinking that they're going to get as Warren said, a lotto payment. And what I explains to the guys, if the investigation is done and it's found that it was negligent stuff, you injured yourself, you know what I'm saying? You will get nothing, you know. So we need to let our people know that those schemes and plans that they want to make of injuring themselves and get a payout, it can be detrimental to them and affect them, their livelihood, you know what I'm saying, supporting their families. And sorry guys, just one more thing I just want to add to that is that it's good to advise our people, you know, this question that Vanessa answered now, to keep a record or keep a copy of if you get injured, keep a copy of that investigation, keep a copy of the report, so that at least you got some traceability should you want to make any sort of claim to the compensation, you know what I'm saying, to CODA. You know, I think it would be an advantage that you know which company, even though Fabian said that the company doesn't pay out, but at least you got traceability. I got injured at this company or whatever, but you got a copy of the report of the incident. Right. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks a lot. Juan, your hand was up.
Good morning, team. No, I think that for me, it's as Warren said, and I think maybe I'm just adding to it. With injuring yourself, employees injuring themselves, wanting to injure themselves, and as we just said now, we there's a lot that's going around within our industries, both within the civil building, high rise, and within the petrochemical. Guys firmly believe in this, and as Warren said, this is not a lotto, because they really believe that even if they just fracture, or not even fractures, not even breaking it, that by them sitting at home they're going to get paid, and then they start fighting, want to take you to bargaining council and wherever we belong to, in order to get paid out. And when you explain to them that you're doing this, then we as safety practitioners become the bad guy. We're supposed to be helping him, but then that we stopping him from getting help, or if you want to call it that way. So we need to discourage this as safety practitioners. We need to discourage this. And this lessons learned, the Bogner, I do the same thing. As Eric said, I discourage it as much as possible, because I've had this in the past where, like, when you're working out, you know, in the civils, you have to go for CLOs and working at the community. The one CLO actually was telling his people to get injured and don't worry, the company is going to pay. And because they didn't realize, they didn't know what is things, so they were getting backaches and stuff like that until we read in the proper act and stuff. And then this particular CLO was actually horrified. The people turned on him. So I've had experience with this injury to yourself, and it's not nice what the employees are doing. And we just have to maintain it ourselves, because that's the biggest thing because everybody's looking for a quick buck, because you're lower earner, so everybody's looking to earn more, get quick money within. How fast can you get quick money to survive, if they want? Some are calling it. Then the other one I want to say is reporting. I know that the exercise is within that same shift. Do we as safety practitioners, can we accept something that's a day late? I know, me personally, I go according to the act, but is there marginal way that we can continue, maybe a day or two later?
Yeah, there is an allowance for it.
There is an allowance. I know, even for example, for hearing loss and stuff, you can basically claim a couple of years later. I don't know, they have a certain allowance within the schedule as well. And then also with injuries also. So somebody, for example, can get hurt the same day. Let's say a knee injury, bumped his knee. So he felt okay, he carried on with work, he didn't report it to anybody. He comes the next day, his knee is sore. There's a ruling that they also say that there's a no name, no blame from the COIDA side. So what that means is that they would treat that person as if they were injured. So in your report that you're submitting to them with your WCL2s, etc., you indicate that the person reported the injury happened the day before. And then there's a question on there that you will all know very well. Do you agree that the person got injured in the same way that they've mentioned or stated that they've been injured? And then it's to your discretion whether you say yes or no. So based on your information, they can also reject the claim or they can process the claim.
Okay. Well, yeah. Because I'm on the...
Just with that as well, if I can come in, Fabian. Obviously a serious injury there's no question about when that will be reported. The other extreme is occupational disease, and as we've spoken about it, I'm sure many times, that some diseases take a long time to show themselves. The other part, even if it's a minor injury like a sprain that doesn't present immediately, if you go to your doctor, your GP, and your GP assesses and asks you your stories and so forth, and it appears that the sprained ankle happened at work, the GP is compelled to tell you, this is probably from work, and the GP in fact is compelled to report it to the Department of Labor. So there's also that as a safety net, so that would obviously be way beyond the end of the shift. But there are ways and means for a late report of an incident.
Yeah, and I was looking at minor injuries, as per se, if it was their window, but because of the Act states this. So yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah, but great presentation.
Thank you, Juan. I see Alex hands up. Alex, you can go ahead. Alex Peterson, your hand is up.
Can you hear me?
You can hear you now.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can go ahead.
Good morning, team. I think one thing that everybody, all of us here, should take into consideration is the fact that we are all speaking from an informed position. We all have some degree of education under our belt, and that in itself is a privileged position. We're talking about workers. Are we talking about permanent workers, contract workers? A lot of them don't have the information that we have at hand, and they're not looking at it as we look at it. Okay. Another important factor that we need to take into consideration is the socioeconomic factors, and one of the big hitters for South Africa at this particular time is our junk status rating. Once this lockdown has passed, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. This is going to give birth to desperation, and what degrees of desperation remains to be seen. We often look at countries like the UK, and we look at the enormous power that the Health and Safety Executive has, and other bodies in the European Union, and throughout Europe for that matter. And they've already been through situations like this where workers have been abused by employers, where workers have been abused by bosses. And one of the things I've seen is labor brokers abuse your contract workers with impunity. I mean, this is something for us to think about in the future. This is something for us to look into, to prepare for. Your presentation is fantastic. However, I have to admit, and it's left me with more questions than answers. So maybe if I can get your number or email, we can have a chat.
Sure.
But thank you very much for bringing this up. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Joseph, I see your hand is up.
Hi, Fabian.
The floor is yours.
Warren, what a brilliant presentation. It's an eye-opener. I wanted to contribute by saying that I had an opportunity to engage or to interact with the Compensation Commissioner. I needed a letter of good standing for one of the heavy engineering company. I got to understand that companies, they pay a lot of money in subscribing to the Compensation Commissioner to get a number, Compensation Commissioner number. And what normally happens is, as people claim during the course of the cycle, at the end of the cycle, there is an assessment that is done based on the claims that went through the COID number. And at the end of the day, you are assessed and then rebates are paid back to you. But the resultant is that based on the rebate or on the number of claims that you have made, you are classified as a high risk company, medium risk, or a low, depending on your claims. So what I wanted to say is it's very important as safety practitioners to also have access to this information, to be able to determine, what type of companies we are dealing with and the probability of injuries that will affect the lives of the workers. So that also can, help to pass the message to the workers to say, look, you're working in a high-risk company. This has been the history of injuries that we have had. This is how much it costs the company for you to be covered in terms of COID. I think that can, send the message home to the employees to say we need to look after our own safety. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Getting some feedback here. Sorry, okay, do we have any other hands up? I see Joseph, I'm going to lower your hand. Is there any other questions before we close? Okay.
Not from me.
Thank you, Joseph. If there's no other questions, thank you again, Warren, for an excellent presentation. Thank you for your time and efforts. I think we all appreciate it. And thank everybody. I'd like to thank everybody that's attended today and continue to show your support in this time. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you, Fabian.